Yo, shalom, shalom, shalom. What's going on, Zay?
Yo, shalom.
Hey, shalom, shalom. How the family feeling?
Well, hopefully everybody that's listening as well. Um, so let's give brothers and sisters, of course, a little grace period to come in. So, you know, in the meantime, if there's anything you can think of, you can bring it out. I'm gonna go ahead and go to our website just to remind brothers and sisters about the new moons and the holy days that are coming up because you still have a lot of new people. So
Gone. Nah, it's a lot going on, man. You know what I'm saying? We moving at the speed of life and prophecy, so it's too much. But pretty much you went over it, dealing with the Kyrie situation. I know brothers probably got fatigue, ancestors probably got fatigue, but it's always good to keep it in your forefront, man. Sometimes the Most High do things to remind us that hey, we still serving our captivity. We not free. Not so much us because we Israelites, we're on the forefront. We're in the trenches. We know where we are. But a lot of our celebrity friends, a lot of us who's on a higher level, they feel as though, they made it. So why should they care? So the Most High is just, bringing them in the fold, let them know that listen, everything the white man gave you, the Most High could take it away, especially if you're standing on the truth. So, that's going on. And we also got to keep one eye on what's going on the international front. Still a war going on. You know what I mean? It's just a lot, man.
yep. I
Uh,
mean, you have everyday cares of life. Family,
exactly. That's true.
jobs. What I'm saying, you got your health, everything. So it's a lot, man. This is not an easy walk. That's why it's not for everybody. Real quick, peace and blessings to everybody that's coming in. Um, we're gonna get probably started in about 3 minutes or so. I like to give brothers and sisters a little bit of a grace period, to come in. I'm starting to realize from looking at the chat that our UK brothers and sisters, they I don't know. It seemed like their time went back earlier than our time goes back for some reason or something like that. So some of them were looking for the class an hour ago. So we're gonna. I believe now the clocks are where they should be for the duration of the academy. So it's gonna be 3 o'clock our time, which for you brothers and sisters in the UK, that's gonna be 8 o'clock your time. I know that's pretty late. So just watch as much of the class as you can. If you have to go to work or whatever and you can't make the whole class, you can always pick it up and go back and watch the class later on. Okay, if you need the link again during the week, just say so in the chat and we'll post the link again. All right. So really quickly, while we're waiting, before we get started, you guys are looking at our website. As I said, we have an updated website that's being built that will be launched soon. Uh, Elder Zahab says before the calendar year is over. So hopefully, there's a couple of things that we're trying to fine tune before we put it out there for you guys. But we definitely have a new website, which is you guys will like when you see. All right. But for now, this is our website, thelinesofisrael.com. And remember what I told you, when you come here, you go to the when you come here, you go to the calendar tab, right? And it's going to refresh itself. And it's going to bring the calendar up shortly, right? There we go. Okay, take some time. So we're currently in the month of November. Today is the 6th of November. So as we scroll down, we can see the only thing that we have is the weekly Sabbath, right? But on the 23rd of November is a new moon. The 23rd of November is a new moon, just to keep brothers and sisters abreast of that, okay? And again, I don't want to assume that everybody knows exactly, because you have people with different levels of knowledge when it comes to this walk, right? So the reason why new moons are important is because that is how we gauge our holy days. Our holy days are according to the moon, right? So when we come to that point in the academy, which I'm going to probably assume will be towards the end of the academy, the latter weeks in the academy, when we do the lesson, which I believe Elder Zahab is going to do on the calendar. We'll go into all those things. We'll start from the beginning and work our way up, right? So a new month is really beginning on the 23rd, according to the Hebrew calendar, not according to the Gregorian calendar that we go by now. But according to the Hebrew calendar, a new moon represents a new month, right? Okay. So this is November. Outside of the new moon on the 23rd, there's nothing really going on. When you come to the month of December, you guys will notice that the Feast of Dedication, right? The Feast of Dedication, what they call Hanukkah, begins Sunday the 18th, right? And works its way all the way down to the 26th. Okay. And December 22nd is also a new moon as well. Okay. So just a couple of things to be aware of. You guys can come and look at the calendar. The important thing is that the important thing that I'm hoping to see as many of you brothers and sisters as possible at Passover this year. So we're going to kind of go over this calendar a lot. I'm going to kind of come here like every week and go over it with you guys, because you want to start making arrangements and plans now, especially if you're moving with a family, like if it's a wife and a husband and some children, and you want to come celebrate the Passover with us, observe the Passover with us. You pretty much almost need to start making plans now, because Passover is about 4.5, 5 months away. That might seem like a long time, but it's not when you're talking about, accommodations and so forth and so on. So we definitely have the events department. Brother Nakumia is over the events department. He's going to be looking for a place for us for Passover. And also, if, brothers and sisters need help with finding accommodations, right? If you don't want to stay in a hotel, if you want to get an Airbnb, we can try to help you, brothers and sisters, find that as well. But we want to get that process started from now. That's why we're talking about it from now, because that Passover thing, as I'm sure Zahab would tell you, will creep right up on you. You know what I'm saying? So that's pretty much it for me. Zahab, you have anything that you wanted to say before we got started?
Nah, just to reaffirm what you're saying. Soon after dedication, it's it's Passover 24/7, all Passover. So just get that in your mind. And I guess, priest, you make the determination when you're gonna tell them where we're gonna have it at. So if brothers and sisters, once you pass through the academy, if you do want to come celebrate Passover with us, you can make arrangements. Priest, it's up to you. You let them know where it's gonna be at, and we could get into that. But he's absolutely right. After dedication, it's all about Passover. That's it.
Now there is one holy day in between, which is Purim, but Purim is like a feast day. It's not really like so technically speaking, and just to be totally transparent, we live in a time and place where, to have an event, you got to rent places out. So a lot of times we'll have a service, online or something like that. We won't actually go ahead and rent out a place to have a holy day like Purim, which is just really a feast day. It's one of our days, but it's a feast day. Passover is a holy convocation. You're supposed to gather for that. That's a must. So we're basically gathering all our resources to put into the Passover. All right. So without further ado, brothers and sisters, let's go ahead and let's get started, shall we?
Hey, one thing, brother Nahum, he's also doing his thing with the attendance, brothers and sisters. When you come in, just let him know that you're here, as far as with the chat or whatnot.
Good, definitely. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's get started, brothers and sisters. Hopefully, we will not experience any technical difficulties, and we can get right through it. Okay. I'm gonna share the whole screen. Yep. Okay. So we got 2 PowerPoints to go over today, brothers and sisters. We have Genesis chapter 1, the preview, and then Genesis chapter 1, the creation. All right. What I did, brothers and sisters, is I didn't want these lessons to be like, I could, if I was to really like put everything into these lessons that was supposed to be in here, each of these PowerPoints probably would have been about 300 slides each, like 600 slides. That's way too much information. Way too much. Because what you're going to find out as we go through this lesson is there's a lot of things in the creation that is implied, meaning it's literally mentioned in the narrative. But there are also a lot of subtleties that are not so implied, that are also in the text. You just have to extrapolate it or pull it out. as you guys are going to see when we go through Genesis chapter 1. There are certain things that are unsaid, but they're understood. You guys have heard the saying, what's understood doesn't need to be said. Well, that's the thing when it comes to the creation. There's a lot of things that have to be answered for that are not mentioned in the text, but they are implied if you have understanding. Okay. So I'm going to go through this briefly. And of course, this is a topic that we can visit at some other point in the future and delve a lot deeper. But I don't really want to overload you, brothers and sisters, with just a ton of information just to put it in there. Like some things that we're just going to read and we're just going to say that's what it is and move on. Okay. And some things we'll get a little deeper into. Okay. So I always thought it was fitting that before we get into the creation story in Genesis, I did a preview, and this is something I did in the last academy too. So this is a PowerPoint that Dave's seen before, the camp has seen before, but repetition is good. And for the people in the academy, you've not seen it, but I thought it important to address certain things that are out there before we actually go into the book of Genesis, so that when we go in there, we can go in there with the proper mind frame. So there's certain things that we have to address, get those obstacles out the way, and it's an easy transition into getting into the Bible. We spent the last 3 weeks going over a lot of history and different things like that, and now we're actually going to delve into the book. All right, so this is the preview. Let's go to slide number 1. Okay. This is the book of 1 Timothy chapter 6 and verse 20. It says, O Timothy, keep that which is committed to thy trust, avoiding profane and vain babblings, and opposition of science, falsely so called. So there is a narrative out there, right? The narrative out there from the world, especially the scientific world, is that the Bible is anti-science, brothers and sisters. That is a lie. The Bible is not anti-science at all. The Bible is anti-false science. There's a difference. This is the passage that a lot of scientists and people that, deal with evolution and these different theories, right? This is a passage that they use. They don't believe in the Bible, but they sure as heck know what the scripture is. And they come here and they'll throw it in your face and say, see, the Bible speaks against science. It does not. So now you brothers and sisters should be familiar with the methodology of how we teach, right? We want to go and look at that word science, because in and of itself, the way that we understand science today, that literally means science. But when you actually go and look at the word that it was translated from, it says something different, right? So let's go to the left-hand side of the screen. And the word science comes from the Greek word gnosis. Gnosis. Now I'm going to stop here and I'm going to hit the rewind button and go back to week number 1. Why is this New Testament passage in the book of Timothy, why are we looking at Greek? Why is it in Greek? If we're Israelites, why is it in Greek? The answer is, if you remember, because when Israel fell, we were scattered into all nations. And these people that were in these areas, after a while of being in captivity under the Greeks, and then when the Romans came into power, even some of those places that were previously under the Greek Empire, their lingua franca was Greek. And we were there. We were living there. As we get further into the academy, I'm going to show you that. The Israelites in the diaspora were so immersed in Greek culture that even the ones that were still keeping Torah, they were only able to speak Greek. They couldn't speak Hebrew. Like today, most Israelites today can't speak Hebrew, right? I can count on my fingers and my toes how many Israelites I know that can have conversational Hebrew. I myself, as long as I've been around, cannot do conversation. I know enough about the Hebrew language, how it works, and how to dissect certain things to bring forth understanding. But to sit down and have a paragraph, 2-paragraph conversation in straight Hebrew, probably not. I would probably butcher that thing, right? So it's the same. It's the same. If that's understood now, because our records are in English, right? That's our, that the language that we speak today, that's the lingua franca. We understand that. It's easier to understand concepts because we was raised with that language. Well, it's the same thing when it comes to the scriptures. So don't let the fact that this is in Greek throw you off. It's our people, but at that time they spoke Greek. That's all. Nothing really hard about that. Okay. So the Greek word for science is the word gnosis. Gnosis, right? Let's see what the word gnosis actually means. When you look up the word gnosis, it means knowledge, signifies in general intelligence or general understanding. So Paul wasn't telling Timothy to avoid science like science in a laboratory type science. He wasn't telling him to avoid that. He was telling Timothy to avoid false knowledge. Anything that will be false, whatever it is. It doesn't have to just be quote unquote science. It could be false history. It could be false breakdowns of scriptures. He told him to avoid profane and vain babblings and opposition of science, where science comes from the word gnosos, which means knowledge, falsely so-called false knowledge, whatever it may be. It wasn't talking about science the way we understand the word today. But that's what people that don't believe in the Bible will run to this verse and use. But you have to know better. You have to go into the Greek and show them that word is not even talking about science. So you can't use this scripture to teach that the Bible is anti-science. That's wrong. And the reason why we're starting here now should be understood by everybody that's listening. The reason why we're starting here is because there is science involved in the creation in Genesis 1. There's science involved in that. So we have to debunk the myth that you can't use science. That's a lie. We don't deal with false science. What's an example of false science? Evolution. But not all evolution. Some evolution is true. Yeah, some evolution is true. I'm going to show you guys that. I'm going to show you that. Just strap in your seatbelts. I'm going to show you guys that. Let's keep going. This is a famous quote that's attributed to Albert Einstein. It says, "Science without religion is lame, and religion without science is blind." When they say religion, we know we don't deal with religion, so we're talking about the Bible. In order to properly exegete the Bible from cover to cover, there is a certain level of knowledge of quote unquote science, right, that you have to have. And there's also a certain level of knowledge of the Bible that you have to know when science starts to go off and teach doctrines that are false, like certain forms of evolution, which are false, because there's evolution that's true and there's evolution that's false. And you have to know the difference. And the Bible helps you stratify what's true from what's false. Let's keep going. So the sister says, "I've always heard that if you believe in the Bible, then you can't believe in science." I'm confused. I believe in the Bible and I believe in science too. Is there any room for compromise? The answer is yes, there is a room for compromise. Let's go. The Israelites actually understood science. Watch this. Let's go back. Let's go back. So here we have a scripture where Paul is instructing Timothy to avoid science, falsely so-called false knowledge, right? But then when you come to the book of Daniel, chapter 1, we're going to read verses 3 and 4. "And the king spake unto Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel, and of the king's seed, and of the princes." Verse 4. "Children in whom was no blemish, but well favored, and skilled in all wisdom, and cunning in knowledge, and understanding of science." So there were Israelites back then that were cunning in understanding of science. Let's see what that word means in the Hebrew, right? When you go to the Hebrew, the word science is the Hebrew word madai. 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 What does that word mean? Knowledge. Knowledge. So these children of Israel and of the king's seed and of the princes, they were very knowledgeable in a lot of areas. Daniel was one of them, as you continue to read in that chapter. So the Bible doesn't condemn science, because in the very same Bible, in the book of Daniel, it says that some of the children of Israel had understanding of science, understanding of knowledge, what real knowledge, proper knowledge, right knowledge. Let's keep going. So no, Daniel was not a white man. So you know what we went over last week, right? This is the Russian icons, because we know black people rule Russia. We all know that. We're all on the same page now. Black people were ruling Russia. In the East, in the West, you had the Renaissance going on, and we were painting black images. So at the Moscow school, this is an icon of Daniel. You can see he has an afro, brown skin, and look at the trimming of his hat. He's wearing his cap compared to his complexion and his afro. A black man, plus the scroll he's holding. Look at his hand compared to the scroll. It's not hard. Here at the Russian Orthodox Cathedral of St. Matthew, this is from the Russian Orthodox Cathedral of St. Matthew. Here's Daniel again, depicted as a black man with an afro. And here are the three Hebrew boys that were in the furnace: Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and everybody in the image is black. I'm just saying, right? Let's keep going. All right. Now, let's go to the etymology of the word science in English, because the same thing that the Bible says, the actual etymology of the word is the same in English. Let's look at it. So this is from the etymologydictionary.com, right? And you see the search. I put it there so you guys can see the search we did. We put in the word science. The word science comes from mid-14th century. What is known or knowledge? So science simply means to know. The etymology of the word in English means to know. The etymology of the word in Greek, which is gnosis, means to know. The etymology of the word in Hebrew, which is madai, means to know. So science means to know, right? And the Bible teaches us that we should know all things, right? So how can the Bible be anti-science? It's crazy. It's a whole crazy concept. But we have to debunk that because people say that, right? And you have to be equipped to have that conversation and destroy that conversation, because you need science to explain Genesis chapter 1, right? You need science to explain Genesis chapter 6 and 7 about Noah's Ark. That's coming up, though. This is the book of Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 7. You know what? I'm going to skip this for now because this is actually in the next presentation. So I'm going to skip this for now. There's a altarpiece in Spain called La Maestra, right? It's an altarpiece that was painted in the 1400s. And here you have King Solomon, black. Look at his face, look at the crown, look at his hands, look at the scroll. Everywhere you go, this pre-Renaissance art is black as hell. And this is what's making the white man so goddamn mad. Like, yo, this stuff is killing them. Literally, I shouldn't say literally, sorry. Figuratively, this is killing their spirit. Because they find themselves, this is why I teach the way I teach. This is what I've been saying to everybody for a long time. And I think it's starting to make sense to a lot of people. This is why I teach the way I teach. I teach via PowerPoint because when I'm just saying stuff, you can argue with me. But I don't want you to argue with me. I want you to argue with the information. If you say that we make stuff up, just explain to me, why is this icon black on this altarpiece in Spain from the early 1400s? Why? That's all you got to do, just explain it to me. See? But if I just say it, they can argue with me. But you got to argue against the information. See? So let's move on. I want to get kind of bogged down in that. That'll go someplace else, right? We're going to skip that for now, too. Okay. And we're going to skip this for now, too. Some of the stuff is important. Okay. So, single cell evolution, a scientific and anti-biblical. This is the false knowledge that Timothy was being warned about Paul. This is the false knowledge right here, right? This is when we need the Bible to explain to us where science goes wrong. So this is Ernst Haeckel, right? We'll talk about him a little bit later. This is Ernst Haeckel, right? And he posited the theory of single cell evolution, right? So here at the very beginning, right here at the top, figure number 1, you guys can see me hovering over it. You have this single cell organism, right? And then a single cell organism split into 2, right? And then you have all the different evolutions of these organisms, and it evolves into sea creatures and whales and, you know, all these different sea creatures and snakes and stuff like that. And then the animal comes on land, and then it turns into a kangaroo, from the kangaroo into a monkey, and from the monkey into the black man. This is called single cell evolution, where everything evolves from one single organism in the beginning. That's madness. That's madness. This is the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 38 through 40. If they read the Bible, they would have known that was a lie. It says, but God giveth it a body as it hath pleased him, and to every seed his own body. All flesh is not the same flesh, but there is one kind of flesh of men, another flesh of beasts, another of fishes, and another of birds, right? So you cannot have where a man evolves from a kangaroo, eventually evolves into man, because it started off as a single cell organism. That's madness. The Bible teaches against that. And science itself teaches against that. Real quick, I'm going to come out and I'm going to make a recommendation, although I'm doing it sparingly or cautiously because this book is very, very long. And right. this book is very long, right? But the name of the book is called Signature in a Cell, right? And this is a very good book that goes and explains a lot of science. This guy is I believe, a paleontologist, right? But he also believes in the Bible. And he wrote another book that I have on my shelf there. I can't see it right now, but I have another book on my shelf that's very good as well. One of the reasons why this book is good, no, this is it right here. There it is, Darwin's Doubt. This one right here. Start off with Darwin's Doubt first. Darwin's Doubt, and then Signature in a Cell. Although I must tell you, brothers and sisters, it's a lot of reading. You may not even have time. It's like 500-600 pages in this book, right? So I myself, to be totally transparent with y'all, I have not read the whole book, and I've had it for years. But I go in and I take information out as I need it. So if I'm looking to study something, right, being that this guy's a paleontologist, I'll kind of go and study some of what he says and then do my own independent research and kind of match it to the Bible to understand some things. And there's certain things that he says that I can't really, there's certain things that I won't be able to study. For instance, there's something called mutations, right? Let's get back to the PowerPoint while I'm talking. There's something called mutations, right? And in order for a monkey to turn into a man, even though when you look at the cranial structure, because these are the arguments they make. They think that we don't know this stuff because we read the Bible. You niggas don't know nothing about science, but then they talk to us like, well, you guys do know about science. Yeah, we do. So even though you look at the cranial structure of what they call primates, if you look at the skeletal structure of what they call primates, right, there is a very similar structure. It's not 100%. There's a very similar structure that man has. That's a fact. That's a fact, right? However, there are also a lot of differences on a microscopic cellular level. In order for a monkey, right, to evolve into man, there has to be something that's involved on a cellular level called mutations, right? They're called mutations. I don't have this stuff on the screen, so I'm just talking. Y'all can write it down if you want to write it down. There's something that has to happen called mutations. Where you're on a cellular level, a DNA level, whatever word you want to use, your cells have to mutate in order for that to happen. Mutations usually are not beneficial. Usually mutations are bad for you. You know what I'm saying? They're usually bad. They're not good. There would have to be between, even though, again, because of the cranial structure and the skeletal structure, there's so many similarities between a primate and a man, even on that level. Like scientists will tell you, I don't know if it's true or not, they'll tell you that, let's just say, I'm throwing a number out there, let's just say that the human anatomy and that of a, let's say a chimp or whatever like that is like 90-95% the same. So let's just say that that's true, right? Let's say that there's a 10% or 5% difference. That 10 or 5% difference in anatomy, in order for you to go from one to the other, would need you to have millions of mutations on a cellular level. Not 10, not 15, millions and millions of your cells would have to mutate from one thing to another for that to be possible. And if you study mutations, mutations are not a good thing on a cellular level. They're bad. Understand that. So this information, a lot of this, like I said before, it's in this book, Darwin's Doubt. If anybody chooses to go out and get this long ass book, I can give y'all some page references where he kind of goes into some of that stuff that'll help you out. But I myself haven't read the whole book. That's how long it is. And I'm a reader. So anyway, let's come back here. So everybody understands what's going on. Let's continue. So again, the Bible says that there's different types of flesh of man and beast. There's no such thing as evolution from a single cell organism to man. Right? That's a lie. All right. What is the recapitulation theory? What is the recapitulation theory? That's something else that needs to be discussed. Right? Reggie, one of the guys that's on Sunday TV, says Israelites don't know science. But when I asked him what the recapitulation theory is, he didn't know. I thought you got the degree. You got the degree, not me. I don't have a degree. I'm an independent researcher, but I have no degree. Anyway, what is the recapitulation theory and why is it important? Well, there's a guy by the name of Ernst Haeckel. We just met him a few slides ago. Here he is, brother Ernst Haeckel again, right? Ernst Haeckel came up with something called the recapitulation theory, right? And the recapitulation theory starts off, or basically teaches this, so I don't have to, I didn't want to give you guys the clinical term. It's called ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny, right? And by the way, the conscious community, they teach this. And this is pseudoscience that's been thrown out of schools like 50 years ago. But it's ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. I'm going to explain that to you, brothers and sisters, without having to go through all this reading and all this confusing stuff. What Ernst Haeckel posited, right, was that all human embryos start off the same. And this is a picture that he drew. All human embryos start off the same. We all start off as quote unquote, what you would call like a tadpole or something like that, right? And so when you look at the evolution of this particular embryo to a fish, this particular embryo to a salamander, right? Then you have the chick, then you have the hog. Notice they all pretty much start the same according to him, right? They have slits like gills, you know what I'm saying, where they could breathe, so forth and so on, right? So he would draw like slits on, like this is the human right here. And these are like slits, like what you would call gills. So this is something that he drew and concocted and said, this is how you know that man evolved from fish, because in the mother's womb, the embryo has gills like a fish. Yes, that's what he taught. That's what he taught. It's called ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. I'm just giving you guys the kind of watered down version of that. But they came to find, so ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. We'll skip that. We ain't got to go. Like I said, I'm not going to make this too complicated. For those that want more on this, we can touch the subject again. But later on in history, when they were able to do microscopic pictures inside of the womb, right? What they found out was that, of course, Haeckel's drawings was BS, because there's some children listening, right? It was BS, right? So above are Haeckel's drawings that we just saw in the picture before, and these are how the embryos actually look. They don't look the same. They don't look the same. That was a lie. But Haeckel's teachings were taught because they wanted to push evolution. And that was a perfect way for them to push evolution by saying all the fetuses are the same. They all have gills. Therefore, human beings had to actually evolve from fish and other creatures. And that would make this single cell organism thing that they were teaching true. This is what they were pushing, right? Okay. Now, I made a statement before. And I made a statement before, and now I'm going to let me just turn my phone off. I'm getting all types of pings to come into rooms on Clubhouse. I don't want to debate with no so-called Jew. Like you go into to debate with a so-called Jew, they throw you out the room and clip your account. Like, we ain't talking to these devils, man. We're not talking to. We're not giving these devils no life. Okay, so this is important, brothers and sisters, to know. These two terms are important to know. Why are these terms important to know, brothers and sisters? This is going to help us when we get to Genesis chapter 6 and Genesis chapter 7 about the flood. So we're taking care of this now, so that when we get there, nobody's confused. What is the difference between microevolution and macroevolution? There's a difference, brothers and sisters. One of them is true, and one of them is not. Macroevolution is true. Microevolution is not. We're going to explain. I'm going to explain. Let's go to the next slide. This is what microevolution versus macroevolution looks like. As we said before, let's start on the left-hand side. You have a single cell organism that eventually evolves into a man. That's macroevolution, right? This is what Ernst Haeckel and all the different evolutionists of the 18 and 1900s were pushing. That we evolved from a common ancestor, and that common ancestor, if you go far back enough, comes from a single cell organism, et cetera, et cetera. That's called macroevolution. That's wrong. But you have something called microevolution, aka speciation. Speciation. What is a species? Macroevolution, origins of new species, right? What is a species or speciation? Before we get to that, let's say this. Microevolution is true. That helps us better understand the story of Noah and the ark a little better. Let's keep going. I think there's better slides as we go forward. Okay, let's keep going. Right. Now, you guys probably have saw this meme floating around social media. If you go to Google, you'll see it. It gives you the dimensions of the Titanic and the dimensions of Noah's Ark, right? When you look at the bottom, it says the Titanic, its capacity was for 3,547 people, right? And you see it was, according to what they say, 882 feet long. Then you have Noah's Ark. The meme says the capacity for Noah's Ark was for 50,000 plus animals, 2 million insects, 8 people, and provisions for a year. Nowhere in the Bible does it tell you that Noah's Ark was built to house 50,000 plus animals. Nowhere does it tell you that. And notice that they say Noah's Ark, according to these specs, was about 450 feet. It was smaller than the Titanic. But people have seen this and lost their mind. Like, damn, the Bible can't be true. It must be a fairy tale, because that's true. How can a 450-foot ship hold 50,000 plus animals? Well, see, the Bible never taught you that. Let's see what the Bible teaches. We're going to go over to Genesis chapter 7, even though we're going to go through these chapters again later, but I just want to get to a point. Genesis chapter 7, verses 13 to 14. In the selfsame day entered Noah and Shem and Ham and Japheth and the sons of Noah and Noah's wife and his 3 children of his wife and the 3 wives of his sons with them into the ark. Verse 14. They and every beast after his kind. That's very important wording. After his kind. It's not just every beast. It's not 50,000 beasts, but it's every beast after his kind. That's important. We're going to get to it in a minute. And all the cattle after their kind, and every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth after his kind, and every fowl after his kind, and every bird of every sort. Why is that important? Let's bring it all together, right? It says right here, Noah did not bring every single species of every single animal onto the ark. That would have been impossible. He brought the animals after their kind, meaning the prototype, aka the archetype of the animal. And after the flood, the process of speciation took place. So you would have this would be the kind, the gray wolf, right? And then as those gray wolf, they start having children, so forth and so on, you come with subspecies of the archetype. That's where you get subspecies of the archetype from. That comes later. Hopefully everybody understands what I'm saying. So Noah would not have to bring the gray wolf on and all these dogs here and all these dogs. No. You bring the archetype on the ship. And then after the archetype is on the ship, after you get off the ship and they start to reproduce, you'll start to notice that you get different species. Sometimes the animals will come out with different colors, different textures, different this, different that. And then you start breeding those. Then you start isolating. Like, for instance, right? I know somebody that had cats, right? And I noticed they were actually black and white cats, right? Some of the litter, the cats came out like all black, right? And then some of the litter, the cats came out and they were like half black and half white. They would be like black with white spots. And then some of the cats had more white fur than black. But this is all from the same parents, right? So then you can take from that litter 2 animals that pretty much look the same, right? And you can breed those, so forth and so on. And you can do that with dogs and anything else. And you create subspecies of animals. So that's what took place after the flood. You start having subspecies of animals that would appear on the earth. But Noah did not need to bring every single species of every single animal on the ark. The ark would not be big enough for that. So the Bible doesn't teach you that. It doesn't teach you that. He brought the animals in after their kind, the archetype, the prototype. That's what he needed. When they get off the ark and they start reproducing, you will start to see other species of that archetype come into play. That's microevolution. And that's right there in the Bible. It's not an animal coming from a single cell or an organism. It's different species coming from an archetype. Just like Noah is the archetype, right? And then Shem, Ham, and Japheth after him, and then they start branching off into their own nations themselves. And Noah will be the archetype, right? And then afterwards, you would have Shem, Ham, and Japheth all the way down to Abraham. Abraham will be an archetype. Then you have his two sons, Jacob and Esau, right? And then Jacob will be an archetype. And then from him, you have the 12 subspecies, which is the 12 tribes. That's how it works. It's not hard. It's all through the Bible. That's how it works. It works the same way in the animal world. So you have Noah being the archetype. You have let's use Abraham. Abraham will be the archetype. And then from Abraham, you have a lot of sub-nations that come out of him, right? You have Moab, right? No, Salakia. Wait. Shem, Salakia. I'm saying Shem, right? Shemitic people. Shem will be the archetype. Out of him, you have Moab, you have Ammon, you have Ishmael, you have Edom, you have Israel. Those would be sub-nations that come from that man. He will be the archetype. And then you would have sub-nations that come out of him. Hopefully everybody understands. It works the same way in the animal world. Same way. The Most High brought the archetype, which was Noah and his 3 sons, onto the ship. Afterwards, they repopulated the earth. And everything broke down into smaller sub-nations all the way until Israel was born. That's how it worked. Guess what? It worked the same way in the animal world. Same way. Noah brought the archetype, the prototype animals on the ship. And afterwards, subspecies would come about. Hopefully everybody understands that nobody's lost. This stuff is not hard. So when you see this meme about them bringing 50,000 plus animals on the ark, that's somebody that doesn't know the Bible. The Bible never taught you that. Noah brought every beast after their kind, the archetype. Then it makes more sense what the Bible is teaching when it teaches that Noah called these animals on the ark, and the size of the ark based on the dimensions the scriptures say, it makes more sense. If you believe the Most High brought every subspecies onto the ark, you're going to have some problems. You're going to have some problems. So you need to understand. Hopefully everybody understands. I'm dealing with intelligent people, so we ain't got to harp on it too long. Another example of speciation, right? This is the archetype, the jungle fowl. It is from the jungle fowl, brothers and sisters, that today you have your modern day chicken. Your modern day domestic chicken comes from the jungle fowl, right? That's where it comes from. And then they learn to domesticate the jungle fowl, and you get your modern day chicken. The same thing from the pig. That pink pig that we see, that everybody talks about, that pink pig, that's a subspecies of the swine, of other animals that were before it. But that's just the what you call the domesticated version of like a wild boar, for example. That's what it is. There are higher species and ultimately an archetype that these subspecies come from. I'll pass that. That's not important. So now you brothers and sisters understand the difference between micro and macro evolution, right? One is fake and one is real, right? Another form of microevolution that's observable is a fetus. Because now you have the technology where they can put the camera inside the womb of the woman and you can see stuff, right? So you can watch an embryo, right, develop into a 4-cell embryo, into an 8-cell, 16-cell. Then you have the blastocyte, right? Then you have at 4 weeks, you now have the fetus, right? Then there's the fetus at 10 weeks, 16 weeks, 20 weeks. That's evolution, but it's observable. This is microevolution. You can see it. It's definitely evolving. You can see it. The evolution that's not real is that stuff where we come from monkeys. You can't observe that. And there's too much, what was the word I used again? There was too much, I just said it. What is the word I just used, man? It totally slipped my mind now. I don't know why. Where you go from one species to another that are not beneficial. What was the word that I just used?
Not mutation, right?
Yes, mutations. Damn, I don't know why I drew a total brain fart on that. Yes, mutations. In order for you to go from a monkey to a man, you have to go through mutations. You know what I'm saying? Which are not beneficial for you. Whereas this embryo is simply developing into what eventually will become a child. You can observe this. You can see this. That's the difference. Look at a caterpillar to a butterfly, right? That's a form of microevolution. You can observe it and you can see it. And this is what Paul was telling Timothy about. There's some knowledge that's true. We've all seen this with the butterfly, right? So this is not false science. Why would the Bible be against this? Why would the Bible be against this? It's not. And this falls under the category of science. The Bible is not in conflict with science. So we have to go through this and make this understood before we actually go into Genesis chapter 1. So that when we talk about science, no one can say, well, you guys don't believe in science. That's a lie. That's a lie. One makes sense and one does not, right? One makes sense and one does not. This is a archetype, and from it you get a bunch of subspecies of dogs. That makes sense. Then you have macroevolution, where you have a single cell organism, and you get a daggone fish. You get a daggone, what is this? A lizard, a dinosaur, a crocodile, a lion, a kangaroo, a horse, a monkey, and an eagle, all from this one microorganism. That's madness. There's a bunch of mutations for every single one of these different creations that you have here. You would have to have a bunch of mutations to turn from one to the other. That doesn't make no sense. It doesn't work. Let's move on. This is the book of Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 7, verses 1 and 2. It says, I myself also am a mortal man like to all, and the offspring of him that was made of the earth. And in my mother's womb was fashioned to be flesh in the time of 10 months, being compacted in blood of the seed of man and the pleasure that comes with sleep. So Solomon knew something. He knew something. When you go and you look under a microscope and you look at a fetus, the fetus is compacted in blood. That's science. Solomon knew about these things. The Most High showed him these things. So the Bible is never in conflict with real science or real knowledge, right? Of the seed of man. You have the seed right here, and you have the egg right here, right? It's in the Bible. This is real. We don't have no issues with any of this stuff, right? This is the book of Psalms, chapter 19. We're going to read verses 1 and 2. It says, the heavens declare the glory of the Lord, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. Day unto day uttereth her speech, and night unto night showeth knowledge. So the creation itself is a testimony to the existence of the Most High. When people say, where is the Most High? The Most High is manifest in his creation. And throughout the Bible, the knowledge of God is compared to his creation. You see that all throughout the Bible. All right. So that's it on that. I kind of just wanted to start with that little bit of a framework so that brothers and sisters are all on the same page. Let me stop sharing the screen just for 1 second. And before I proceed, I'm going to see something. All right, guys, before I proceed, I want to know, you know what? I'm good. I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to keep going. Let's get right to the next one.
Hey, Priest, while you get into the next one, you know what it is also? You know, the fetus is in that amniotic fluid, and the child could breathe in the fluid, but it's a special type of fluid. I guess that's why they would say, oh, the fetus has gills because it can breathe in water like a fish. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So they would misconstrue that and try to say, oh, a fetus has gills, but that's totally different.
Yeah, it's totally different. It's not even shaped the same or anything. It's total madness, right? One of these days I just want to deal with just that. I'm gonna do a whole lesson on that, just the development of a child and stuff like that, and we go into all that stuff because that's important to know. So one of these days, Lord allow. All right, so now let's delve right into Genesis chapter 1. So brothers and sisters, this is not going to be a comprehensive breakdown. Like I said, I didn't want to make this PowerPoint way too long. I just kind of wanted to just introduce some different ways of thinking and looking at things, if anything. I'm not really breaking any new ground. I just wanted to have you brothers and sisters think about things a little bit differently than you normally may have before, and open you up to some new concepts when it comes to the creation. Okay, so we're going to breeze right through this. And after that, I'm going to take questions. It's not going to be today. Probably won't be as long. Like not every academy I'm going to go all the way to 5:30. Some academies I may end a little early. You know what I'm saying? Depending on how quickly I get through the lesson and how many questions come in. What I will say, brothers and sisters, is that I am going to put together a quiz of some of the stuff that we went through. Right. So I may possibly do a review of some of the stuff that we went through next week for the first half an hour or so. Just touch on a few topics that we went over so far. And then the following week, I'm probably going to give brothers and sisters a quiz. I just want to see where brothers and sisters are at. I want to make sure, because you guys tell me everything is good. You guys tell me you're understanding everything. But the only way to really know that for sure is to see how you guys present the information back that you've been given. Then I'll know that you understand it. Right? Because you don't, to me personally, this is the way I think. You might understand something, but you don't really own it until you could teach it. So you might sit in the class, and you might hear me say something like that makes sense. I understand that, right? But until you own it, you can't teach it. So you can only resonate with what I'm saying, but you can't teach it. You don't want to be that way. Whatever it is that I present to you, you want to be able to present to somebody else and answer whatever questions that they have. So I want you guys to own the information, which is why I'm going to see where you guys are at with certain things. Okay, let's go. Okay. So some of you brothers and sisters may have heard of Maimonides. He's a rabbi from the 12th century, right? He has a famous quote. There's a reason why I'm starting off with him. He said something similar to the quote that was attributed to Albert Einstein. The medieval philosopher Moses Maimonides insisted that the conflict between science, which now we know means knowledge, and the Bible arise from either a lack of scientific knowledge or a defective understanding of the scriptures. It's either one of the two that's going on. Either you don't sufficiently understand the way science works, or you don't understand what the Bible is trying to convey. And that's usually the problem. A lot of the early scientists of the late 1800s and early 1900s, a lot of them were Bible believers. Even though they were white folks, a lot of them were Bible believers. It is only now in modern times that most scientists, not all scientists, but most scientists reject the Bible. That's like a new thing. But that wasn't the case in the 18 and 1900s. All right, so let's move on. Okay. I want to start here. The creation story, we're starting in the upper right-hand corner here. The creation story is not just about the creation of the earth and the universe. That's not all that was going on. That might be all that you literally read on the text, but there's some things that, while not mentioned, are implied if you read deep enough into the text. The creation story is not just about the creation of the earth and the universe. It is also the creation of the laws that govern the universe. The universe that we exist in the creation. These laws are in place so that the creator does not have to intervene in his creation on a regular basis. The Most High does not have to intervene in his creation on a regular basis, because when the earth was created, the Most High created the creation in a way where in many cases it is self-existing and self-perpetuating, because he created laws that govern the universe. One of those is the cycle of a tree. Every time that you see a tree in the springtime, you see this right here in the light green, the mint green. In the springtime, you see the tree budding, right? Then by the time of spring into late summer, you see the tree in full bloom, right? The leaves are looking strong and healthy from the sun, the rain, everything looking strong and healthy. Then this time of year, when there's not so much sun and the weather starts to get a little cold, the leaves start to turn different colors, especially depending on where you live in the Northeast, whatever like that. It starts to turn different colors, starts to fall to the ground. And in the wintertime, the tree is barren, right? Because it's cold. So there's no vegetation, there's no nothing. So the tree is almost like in a form of hibernation. And then in the springtime, the cycle starts all over again. Do you think the Most High is coming off his throne doing this every spring to every tree in creation? No, it don't make no sense. You think the angels are coming down with everything that there is to do to come down to every tree in creation to have to do to put it through this process every season? No. The Most High created the laws that are in place that this is what happens to the tree every year. The Most High doesn't have to intervene in his creation because he created the laws that govern the universe to begin with. The same is true. Oops. Wait, hold on a second, y'all. I'm missing a slide. Something happened. That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You guys get the picture, right? So we'll just go on to the beginning. Okay. Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, right? So this is, verse 1 is a summary of what's eventually going to happen. This hasn't happened yet, but Genesis chapter 1 and 1 is kind of giving you a preview of what's going to happen in these subsequent verses that we're going to read. Now we're going to come to the Wisdom of Solomon chapter 7. And we're going to start from verse 17 and work our way down. And by the way, here we got another Russian icon from the city of Vologda in Russia. That's King Solomon. I don't even need to say nothing. Like it's clear. It says, verse 17, it says, "For he hath given me certain knowledge of the things that are, namely to know how the world was made and the operation of elements." That would be what we call today science. So Solomon had a knowledge of creation and how the elements operated. He understood that. He understood science as we know it today. The beginning, ending, and midst of times, the alteration of the turnings of the sun, and the changes of seasons. Solomon understood that, and all the things that go with the changing of seasons. But the changing of seasons, like we said before, you have the trees, right? They go through their process. Water goes through different processes as well, right? Evaporation, right? Then you have the precipitation and all that other stuff. Water goes through a process too. That's already, the laws for that are already in place in the universe. The Most High don't have to come down and alter that or interfere in that. It's already here, right? The sun and the turning of the sun is already in its, the sun is already in its orbit, and it does what it's supposed to do. The seasons change on their own. You have winter, spring, summer, fall every year, right? Without fail. These laws were all set forth in the beginning. So the Most High doesn't have to come in and intervene in his creation for any of that stuff. And so the point I'm trying to show you is that that's implied in Scripture, whether it's actually written or not. There's certain things that the earth does on its own because the Most High created it that way. That's part of the creation. That's part of it. Not just the creation of the physical things, but the laws that govern those physical things were also created at the same time. Hopefully that makes sense. Verse 19, the circuits of years, the positions of stars, the natures of living creatures, the nature of an animal, right? Which we'll get into as we go down later into the chapter. The natures of animals was created in the beginning. Most High gave animals their nature. Animals work mostly off of what? Instinct. And then amongst the animal kingdom, you have a food chain. You have animals that are higher up in the food chain and animals that are lower down in the food chain. You got the predators and you got the prey. You have that on land and you have that in the ocean. And you have that in the air. You have birds of prey, right? And birds of the predators. That's their nature. You can't change it. All that was set forth in the beginning in Genesis chapter 1. The furies of winds, beasts, the violence of winds, the reasonings of men, the diversity of plants. That's in Genesis chapter 1 too. We're going to read that too. Most High had to give Adam that. And the virtue of roots, right? Herbs. Most High had to give Adam that. That's all in Genesis chapter 1. All that was set in place. All that deals with, all these are sciences. And all such things that are either secret or manifest. Let's go. Who was the God being mentioned in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, right? We're just going to get right to the point. When you look at that word it's a plural word, which is Elohim. The world says Elohim, and Elashawan Kodash is Elohim, and that's referring to the angels. So it's a divine council where God, Christ, and the angels in the beginning, the Most High gave them the blueprint. Christ created the angels, and they helped, and Christ created everything else, including the angels. That's what happened in that divine council in Genesis chapter 1, right? So let's look at John chapter 1, verses 1 through 3. It says, in the beginning was the Word. That Word is Christ. We know that. And the Word was with God. When was this beginning? The beginning is Genesis chapter 1. So Christ was with the Most High in the beginning. But understand the beginning is where we read about in Genesis, right? But there's a time frame before that. We know nothing about that. Remember in Daniel chapter 7, Daniel calls the Most High the Ancient of Days. Our beginning is what we read about in Genesis, but there was a time frame, whatever that is, before that, where the Most High existed. We know nothing about that. That's not for us to know. But when it came time for what we know, what is manifest to us for us to see, Christ was there with the Most High in the beginning. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. That word God is not saying that Christ is God Almighty. Christ was one of the angels, because that word God in Genesis chapter 1 is the word Elohim, which means angels. It's not talking about the Most High God. Christ was one of the angels that was there with God in the beginning. Verse 2, the same was in the beginning with God, and all things were made by him. So Christ led the charge of all the creation that we're about to read. And without him was not anything made that was made. The Most High gave Christ the blueprint, and Christ and the angels executed the Most High's blueprint. Just like the Most High gave David the blueprint for the temple. The Most High told David, you can't build the temple, but I'll give you the blueprint. So the Most High told David how the temple, he gave him all the specifications on how the temple was supposed to be built, but said, you can't build it. So David had to pass that down to Solomon, and Solomon executed that work. It's the same thing in the beginning, same thing. All right. Genesis chapter 1, verse 2. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the water. So when it says the earth was without form and void, everything was in its elemental stage. The elements, like you have your periodic table, everything was in its elemental stage. Nothing had been formed yet. In order for things to be formed, different elements have to come together and combine to form something. That's how things are formed. Different elements have to come together to form things. Before that, they're just in an elemental stage. So when it says the earth was without form and void, meaning the earth had not yet been formed. The elements were present for the earth to be formed, but the formation process had not come to pass yet, right? Let's read on. Now let's study the law of gravity real quick and why it's important. Pay attention, because this will help out brothers and sisters a little bit. Pay attention to the law of gravity. We're not going to watch the whole video, just a little bit. Pay attention.
Welcome to Moo Math and Science. We are familiar with gravity as the reason objects fall.
That's about the most that most people know about gravity. That gravity is just the reason why you fall. You know, you drop something, you drop a glass, that's because of gravity. That's what we're taught. But it's more profound than that when we're talking about creation. Pay attention.
What is gravity? Sir Isaac Newton described gravity as an attractive force between all objects with mass.
Did you hear that? Gravity is an attractive force between objects with mass. So when the earth was without form and void, the elements had not come to, the elements do have mass, and they had not come together yet. They had not come together yet to combine to form anything, including the earth or anything else.
He described gravity as a mysterious action at a distance. Einstein described gravity as the bending of space and time. The reality is that gravity keeps us from falling off the earth, and it's what keeps the earth in orbit around the sun, and it's what caused the sun, planets, and moons to form. Every object with mass attracts every other object with mass. That means your dog, the moon, and a huge star are all attracted to you and you to them. Sir Isaac Newton discovered that the gravitational force between two objects is directly proportional to the product of the mass of the objects and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between the objects. In simple terms, this means the law of gravitation states all objects in the universe attract each other through gravitational force, and the law depends on welcome to Moo
Okay,
Rapid
so I'm
Science.
sorry. That
So
was
the
my
object
fault. I
square
apologize.
between the object means the law of gravitation states all objects in the universe attract each other.
So what had to be present for the earth to start? Remember, the scriptures say the earth was without form and void. So everything was in its elemental stage. So for the earth to be formed, which means now the elements have to come together, what needed to be present? What they call today gravity. Things that would bring these elements some type of attractive force that would pull these elements together to start forming things. They call it gravity today. What did the Most High call it? We don't know. But we know that it's gravity. So these laws, again, are being introduced and we're being introduced to these things, but it is not, it's implied. Does everybody understand what I'm saying? It's implied. It's not there, but you understand the concept. In order for water to be formed, you have to have two hydrogens and an oxygen that have to come together to create water. Does everybody understand? So forth and so on, right? I'm not going to watch the rest of this video. You guys get the point, right? Like I said, the chemistry of water. When things are formed, elements are brought together. What causes elements to come together and attract to each other? It's called gravity. All right, let's move on. So again, what we're understanding now, right? And that's why I said I wanted us to expand our minds beyond just what's written on the paper and really think about this stuff. Because science is throughout the Bible, but sometimes it is implied. You got to extrapolate it. This is Genesis chapter 1, verse 2. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of the Most High moved upon the face of the water. So the Most High began to start to cause things to start to happen. When I say the Most High, I should say Christ and the angels started to cause things to start happening. What was happening? We're going to get to it. Let's go. Really quickly, let's do Genesis chapter 1, verse 3. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. So in Genesis chapter 1, verse 3, the Most High said, let there be light, and there was light. Now, what happens is, you brothers and sisters have to think, this is still the first day. The sun and the moon have not yet been created. So what is happening here in Genesis chapter 1, verse 3? What is the light? Because Shaquille O'Neal is like, Uncle Coon Shaquille O'Neal is like, how can there be light if the sun was not created yet? Well, that's not what it's talking about. Watch. Let's go to the next slide. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. Pay attention. Excited atoms or elements emit light. Sorry about that. I don't want to turn my phone off because I might get an important call. Excited atoms or elements emit light. So when the angelic forces moved upon the face, it moved in space and began the process of creation, i.e., bringing elements together to form creation, these excited elements emitted light. There would be Google. You know the word Google means infinity. I don't know if y'all know that. There would be an infinite amount of elements that would be activated, the product of which would be light. So in order to start causing the earth to form, the creation to form, right? The elements would be excited. That's the Spirit of God moving on the face of the waters. When elements get excited, they emit light. Watch.
The energy resulting from heating or electrical discharges is absorbed by atoms, which are then said to become excited. This energy is then returned by the emission of light.
Got it? You guys got it? When atoms are excited, they emit light. So when the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters, and these elements started to become activated because they got to start coming together now to start forming things, they emit a light. And there's billions and billions, an infinite amount of these elements that are coming together. Does everybody understand what I'm saying? Hopefully everybody understands what I'm saying. Let's start from the beginning and watch that again.
The energy resulting from heating or electrical discharges is absorbed by atoms, which are then said to become excited. This energy is then returned by the emission of light. The spectrum of the emitted light depends on the kind of atom. Every element has its own unique spectrum. This fact can be used for detecting the presence of particular elements. For example,
so I'm going to stop there. You guys get the point, right? Let's move on to the next thing. What is bioluminescence? Does anybody know what bioluminescence is? Bioluminescence. Chris White says nobody cares, huh?
Nah, I said con.
Well, I know you do because you're the camera guy, and you plus you know about this stuff too. So I know you know what it is. Let's go. Okay, the human body emits light too, right? That's why they say that you have an aura, because the elements we are composed of emit light at different wavelengths. Pay attention.
Did you know that the human body literally glows, emitting a visible light in extremely small quantities at levels that rise and fall with the day? I bet most of you didn't. So that will be our topic for this video. As you are watching this video, you are glowing, weakly, faintly, but glowing nonetheless. Welcome back to Sell It, guys. Before we start,
we don't gotta watch though. Like, I'm not gonna play all these videos and stuff like that. I just want you guys to get the concept of what it is I'm showing you. All the elements of which, by the way, we are composed of these elements, all emit light, and human beings emit light as well. So there was light in the beginning, even though there was no sun, because these elements were excited, they were agitated, they were coming together, creation was being formed, so there was light. It's really that simple. It's not hard. If you understand and have a basic understanding of science, you would know these things, right? I'm no scientist by any stretch of the imagination, but this stuff is kind of basic, right? Let's move on. So again, the angelic forces activated the elements which caused them to illuminate, and there's your light in Genesis chapter 1, verse 3. Let's move on. And God saw the light, or the activation of the elements in the creation, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness, because now the earth was formed. Now the earth was formed. So the Most High divided light. Now these elements had come together and formed the earth. And guess what? Now the Most High will divide the light and the darkness. One half of the earth will be light at one time of the day, and one half of the earth will be dark. And it will switch every 12 hours, give or take, right? Now, how you know that that's true, and a lot of times science lies, is that even on an overcast day, like I'm looking out my window right now, it's an overcast day. The sun has not been out all day, but it's still light outside. Because the creation has its own light. Its own light. Apart from the sun and the moon. The creation has its own light. All right, let's move on. I don't know why I'm getting like 100 texts and my phone is going off. I don't know why when I'm doing class today. I don't get it. All right. Salaki about that, y'all. Genesis chapter 1, verse 5. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and the evening and the morning were the first day. All right. Genesis chapter 1, verse 6. It says, and God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and it divided the waters from the waters. So the firmament is what today you will call your ozone layer. And above the ozone layer is waters, or what you would call space, outer space, right? And below the firmament is also water as well, right? There's water all around us, right? Let's move on. Now, when you look up that word firmament in the Hebrew, right? It's rakwayai, which means an extended surface or expanse firmament, right? So that's like it's like almost like a dome, like what we just saw in that picture right there. It's almost like a dome that's over the earth that separates what's called outer space from what's in our atmosphere under the firmament, right? And outside of the earth, you have something called the Van Allen belt as well, which emits radiation, but we won't get into that right now. We won't get into that right now, you know. Verse 7. And God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament. So under the firmament, the Most High have divided those waters from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so, out of space. The Most High divided our atmosphere and used the firmament to separate our atmosphere from what's called outer space. Now, randomly, guys, I just grabbed pictures to kind of give you guys a little bit of a visualization. I'm not saying that I agree with this is how everything looked when the Most High and the angels created it, but these are PowerPoints. So I have to use the best pictures that they give me on Google Images, right? So you guys, just for you guys to get the idea. Let's move on. Verse number 8. And God called the guy. When we're saying God, don't forget, don't lose the thought. We're not talking about the Most High. We learned in the first slide that the word God is Elohim. So this is Christ and the angels creating everything, right? And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. Now, I want to take a look at something with this word heaven, because this word heaven is also sometimes deceiving as well, right? So the word heaven in Genesis chapter 1, verse 8 comes from the Hebrew word shemayim. Shemayim, right? Shemayim. That's the Hebrew word shemayim, right? When you come to the Hebrew word shemayim right here, it simply means heavens, right? But I want to show you guys something. Let's go back one slide for a second, right? 2 slides. Let's read this again. Genesis chapter 1, verse 7. And God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. Waters, right? But you guys are going to find out the waters that were above the firmament, that's talking about your heaven here in verse number 8. The Hebrew word there is shemayim, right? Which means heavens. Well, watch this. When you look at the Hebrew word for water, right? So here's your shemayim, that's your heavens, right? When you look at the Hebrew word water, it's mayim. That means water. You guys see that? Water. The only difference is you have this prefix, this particular Hebrew letter right here, this Hebrew character right here, which is a prefix, the shah, or as they say in the new modern Hebrew, the shin, the shah, right? That's the prefix. So what it's saying is that the word heavens literally means water. The only difference between the two words is you have a prefix right here to let you know that it's not literally talking about water like what you would drink. It's talking about the waters that were above the firmament space, or what we call the heavens. Does everybody understand? I'm going to say that again. The prefix here, the shah, at the beginning of the word, because the rest of the word is water. See the ma, the ya, and the ma, right? That's water. Same word right here. See, water. Water. But there's a prefix here, the shah. So it's letting you know that it's not, even though the heavens are referred to as waters in Genesis chapter 1, it's letting you know that those are not waters that you drink, but outer space. The Hebrew word is shemayim, which just literally means waters. That's what it means. That's why I keep saying the Most High separated the waters above the firmament from the waters underneath the firmament. The waters above the firmament is what you would call outer space. That's it. Or the heavens. Not the heavens where the Most High dwells, but we just call it the heavens, right? You look up into the heavens, as they say, that's a colloquial phrase. You look up into the heavens, you look up into the sky. So the waters or the heavens above the firmament, as opposed to the waters underneath the firmament. That's all it means. Hopefully everybody's following along and understanding. All right, let's go on. Genesis chapter 1, verse 9. And God said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land also appear. And it was so. Now, there was a law that was put in place earlier in Genesis chapter 1, I believe it was verse 3, that was created then, that helps this happen as well. So remember, gravity, it was the gravitational pull that when the earth, before the earth, when it was without form and void, and then the elements started to come together, when the Most High started bringing the creation together, that force that brings things together is gravity. It's called a gravitational pull, right? Also, that's what keeps the water or the oceans from flooding the whole earth. So because that law was already in place and introduced earlier on, now the Most High is able to separate the waters from the dry land. And the waters do not overflow the dry land. Gravity plays, it's not the only force in place that stops that, but it's one of the forces that are in place that was created that helps keep the water where it's supposed to be in its place and the land where it's supposed to be in its place. Unless the Most High intervenes in his creation, now we have the Most High intervening in his creation because the Most High wants to send a flood. Then that's the Most High intervening in his creation. That's what stuff we read about in the Bible. It wouldn't be a supernatural event if the Most High was always intervening in his creation. It'd be normal. It's supernatural because it doesn't happen except for certain times. When the Most High gets upset, he'll intervene in his creation and send a flood, send a hurricane, or send the angels to do this, that, or the third. Now the Most High is intervening in his creation, and you have a supernatural event. Natural events are things that the Most High set in place from the creation, and they happen naturally because laws were put in place to govern those things. Let's move on. And God called the dry land earth, right? And the gathering together of waters he called seas, and God saw that it was good. And God said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, the tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth, and it was so. The universe, or the creation, which includes the earth, there's supposed to be a space there. Let me come out. Space there. So next time I do it, okay. The universe, including the earth, are tuned for life from the inception of the universe. So when the Most High brought the elements together and created the earth, when it was created, was already tuned for it to bring forth trees, grass, and all that. That's why I said what I said earlier, where these things go through a cycle. Like, for instance, if you own a home, right, you know, this time of year, especially in cold climates, your grass doesn't grow the same way that it will grow in the springtime and the summertime. In the spring and the summertime, you might have to mow your lawn twice a week because it's growing so profusely, right? Because the herbs, the ground, everything is in tune with the creation and the laws that govern it. So the earth is already tuned to bring forth the grass and everything in its season, and in seasons like this, not so much. So the Most High doesn't have to intervene in this either. Every season, especially if you're somebody from the Caribbean, right? You go down there for certain seasons, and the banana trees are yielding, the pomegranate trees are yielding on its own in the wild. How is that possible? Because the laws are in place where the Most High has it, where certain seasons, certain things grow on its own. So the earth is in tune. When the angels created the earth, it's in tune to do these things automatically. I don't understand. I've never gotten so many goodness gracious calls. Do I really got to turn my phone off? I might have to turn my phone off. Like these, I'm keeping calls off the hook. I don't understand it.
You might have to, man. This is powerful information.
Right. God, I just turned it off. The universe, including the earth, are tuned for life from the inception. That is why it says, let the earth bring it forth, because when the angels created the earth, they created it so that it does this stuff automatically on its own every season. That's why Adam didn't have to till the ground. He didn't have to do that. Noah eventually had to be a husbandman and till the ground. But Adam at first didn't even have to till the ground. The earth was just bringing stuff forth because it was tuned to do that. The earth within itself had all the necessary properties to sustain life from the beginning. Just like man and woman, we have the necessary properties to reproduce from the beginning. The women, what I believe, you could correct me if I'm wrong, Elizabeth, if I'm wrong, you could correct me. I believe a female is born with all her eggs when she's born, right? She already has all her ovaries when she's born. She's already tuned to be part of reproducing already. Most High don't have to come down and intervene because the way that the human body was designed in the beginning, the Most High designed it so that you can reproduce. Now, the Most High, of course, can bless your womb, so forth and so on, and have you bring forth children, but you have to lay down with the woman and do the act. There's no virgin births. There's no immaculate conceptions. If you want to bring forth life, a man and woman have to lay down together and do it. The Most High have to come down and be like, hey, Zahab, take your wife and go in the room and go make a baby. Know that it's natural. It's naturally, you're naturally inclined to want to be with your woman and naturally inclined to want to reproduce with her because the Most High designed you that way. So he don't have to intervene in that unless, of course, the womb is barren. And of course, you would pray to the Most High, so forth and so on. We understand these things. But we're in tune with creation and with nature already. And see, when you understand these things, the Bible comes out of the realm of being spooky, because this is why so many people have a problem with it. Because now we're marrying science to the Bible and common sense, real science and common sense. Let's keep going. And the earth brought forth grass and herbs yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after his kind. And God saw that it was good, and the evening and the morning were the third day. So we keep seeing this thing about seeds to let you know that the seed, whatever the seed is, that's what it is. That includes man. So we understand these things. We ain't got to harp on it. Everybody understands these things. That's why the nationality is determined on by the father, because the man carries the seed, right? In a colloquial sense, a man and a woman can have a seed, because the word seed in a colloquial sense, in a slang sense, just means your child, your offspring, right? So when a child is born, he's the offspring of both the man and the woman. So in that colloquial slang term, yes, women can have a seed, but a woman does not have a seed as in sperm. The man literally has a seed, literally and colloquially. He has both. The woman's is just colloquially. That's it. Verses 14 to 15. Now we get to the creation of the sun. And God said, let there be lights in the firmament of heaven to divide the day from night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years. So the sun and the moon, their main purpose, right, when it comes to man, of course, there's 100 other purposes that I could think of that they serve. When it comes to man as Israelites and women as Israelites, we use the sun for signs, right? That's why Jeremiah 10 says, don't be dismayed by the signs in heaven. Because when you see certain things happening with the sun and the moon, these are signs. Like, for instance, for the longest, I would say for the last, as long as I can remember, the moon would be out in the daytime. That's a sign. It's been like that for a long time, right? The sun is also used for seasons too. A lot of farmers work off a solar calendar. So they know when to plant, when to reap, so forth and so on. A lot of agriculture works on a solar calendar. I believe, you could correct me if I'm wrong, Sahab, I believe the Farmer's Almanac is based off the solar calendar. I could be wrong, but I believe so.
Yeah.
And the moon, of course, is for our seasons, our holy days, right? That's how we determine our months and our holy days and our years. That's by the moon, right?
The moon also has its effects on certain crops also. You have certain underground crops like yams and certain things that, because the moon emits its own light, which is separate from the sunlight, so on and so forth. So everything has its reason and its purpose in creation.
And of course, then, of course, the sun, plants, are able to create chlorophyll because of the sun, and human beings, vitamin D and a whole bunch of other, they serve a whole bunch of purposes. Like, if there's no sun, a lot of creation would be, pretty much destroyed, right? When you go to places where the sun doesn't shine, like if you go to certain parts of Alaska, they say, where you don't get as much sunlight every year as you would someplace like here, or even Florida, even more, then you'll notice that it doesn't yield the same type of vegetation. It's just not the same, right? So the sun definitely plays a large role in the creation, but the earth has it and emits its own light, and the creation emits its own light. So that's how come there was light even before the sun was created. But the sun notice that on an overcast day, it might be light outside, but it's still gloomy. But the sun, when it's out, emits a great light. So it's like really vibrant light, if that makes sense. The light is greater because now the sun is out. But even when the sun is not out, it's still light. All right, let's move on. I think verse 15, and let them be for lights in the firmament of the heavens to give light upon the earth, and it was so. Verse 16, and God made two great lights, the greater to rule the day, which we know is the sun, and the lesser to rule the night, and he made stars also. And he set them in the firmament of the heavens to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw it, that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the fourth day. Verse 20. And God said, let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that hath life, and fowl that may fly above the heavens in the open firmament of heaven. So man actually comes out of the waters, brothers and sisters, literally. As Ahab said, you know, when if you look at an embryo was compacted in a woman's stomach in blood, and as he said, amniotic fluid and other things, right? So that's like those are water, comprised of water, right? And mankind itself, when we were created from the waters, and we came forth out of the waters. That's why 70% of your human body is composed of water, because we come from the waters, literally. Verse 21, and God created great whales. That covers just large fish. That's all it means, just large fish. It's not necessarily talking about your great white and your beluga whales and all of this. It's large fish of many different sorts, right? And every living creature that moveth, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind. So everything came out the waters, everything. That's why water is an essential part of everybody, even birds, animals, humans. Everybody needs water. Everybody, because you come from the waters.
But let's not confuse the single cell theory, because you understand what I'm saying? You see how it could kind of converge a little bit, Priest?
Right, of course. Of course. We literally were created. We didn't come out of no single cell. All the different animals and different things come out of the waters, period. It wasn't no single cell animal that came out. The Most High created sheep. The Most High created giraffes. The Most High created lions. The Most High created man and woman and all the creatures, eagles, you know what I'm saying, seagulls, whatever. They all came out the waters, everybody. All right. Verse 21, and God created great whales and every living creature that moveth, which the waters brought forth abundantly after his kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply. So the Most High blessed them and told them to be fruitful and multiply. That's what we was talking about earlier, where within all these animals, it's instinctual with them to reproduce, right? In the animal kingdom, sometimes the female animal, whatever animal might be, emits there's a certain time where she's like ovulating or whatever. She's in heat and she emits a certain, I don't know what the word to use is, pheromone, whatever like that, where the male of the species will know that that woman is ready to reproduce and he'll reproduce with her. It's instinctual. It's instinctual, right? She does it instinctually because she's in heat and she knows it's time for her to reproduce. And he comes and he lays with her and reproduces with her instinctually. That's already programming the animals. And this happens, it's self-perpetuating. If you go to the jungle, you go to any place like that in Africa and you look around, the animals are reproducing, it's self-perpetuating. The Most High does not have to come off his throne and do that. Right? Verse 22. And God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply and fill the waters and the seas, and let the fowl multiply the earth. And the evening and the morning were the fifth day. Right? Now, as I mentioned before, right, I'll just show it again with this particular graph right here. In all of this, when the Most High created the animals, right, the Most High also created, like I said, the food chains, right? So you have apex predators, then you have predators, and then you have prey, right? So the apex predators are important because, you know, if you didn't have lions, right, then those gazelles and giraffes and everything, they reproduce a lot. Some of these animals have like large litters, right? So there will be like an overpopulation of certain animals. So the Most High created the lion to be like an apex predator. And by them hunting like zebras and like I said, gazelles and different things like that, it kind of keeps the population of these animals in check. It's self-perpetuating. So the Most High gave them the instinct to hunt like that. And that kind of keeps the populations in check, because when you don't keep populations of animals in check and you remove predators and stuff like that, like for instance, I know there's a place, Zahab knows what I'm talking about. There's a place over by where I work here in New York, and there's like an overabundance of seagulls over there or whatever. You know what I'm saying? They're shitting all over the goddamn place. You know what I'm saying? Because They're just reproducing like crazy, and the ecosystem is out of order over there because it's mostly urban, right? The same is true with deers, right? A lot of times you have, like in the area where I live, you have an overpopulation of deers over here. So, and there's no apex predators that hunt deer over here, which is why Esau like hunts them himself. Because if you don't, they'll overrun you. Right? But in the jungle is, where human beings don't necessarily live, the Most High has these apex predators, and that's what they do. And also on another level, and that this is not really part of the lesson, there's something I'm going to go into when we go into Leviticus chapter 11. It's a great book called Fauna and Flora of the Bible. And the reason why that's important is because the dietary laws that the Most High introduced to us are, of course, based on health first and foremost, right? We know a pig is disgusting. It doesn't have sweat glands. It eats garbage. Shrimp, lobster, and crab, the same thing. Those foods are filled with sodium. So we already know it's too much overabundance of sodium does to your system. All that is true. But guess what? When you go on a deeper level too, certain animals and certain plants the Most High told us not to deal with is also to keep the ecosystem balanced as well. It's also to keep the ecosystem balanced as well. Like if we would start eating those animals and dealing with those plants and so forth and so on, it would throw the whole creation out of whack. Like Esau's whole creation is out of whack because they don't understand these things. Well, they do understand it, they don't apply it, and they don't care. That's why their whole ecosystem is out of whack. Ours won't be in the kingdom because that stuff is going to be reintroduced to us. And Christ is going to break it down to us. Some animals, you don't eat it because it's simply not healthy for you. But some animals, the Most High told us not to eat because they're here to do other jobs, right? They might be an apex predator or they might be a predator. Not an apex predator, but like the one right underneath. And they're here to hunt other animals and keep the population in check. The Most High knows these things. We as men, we don't know these things, but everything in creation is for a reason. That's why the Bible says when the Most High created these things, he saw these things and they were good. Because these animals were put in their order. They're all here for a reason. There's much of the Most High's creation. I want to pick the right words here. I'm going to say I don't like, right? But I have to remind myself that they're here for a purpose. I don't like spiders. Right? Especially the bigger ones. Like, who would like a tarantula? You don't like that. But you understand the Most High got them here for something. Right? I don't like flies. When a fly gets inside your house or whatever like that, and it keeps buzzing in your ear and you're trying to kill a thing and you can't kill it. But understand, those things break down like when an animal, a dog, whatever like that, they'll go and they'll break that stool down. That's what they're doing, however they do it. I couldn't sit here and give you guys the science on how they do it, but notice that flies will be attracted to if a dog shits, the fly will be attracted to it. It's something they're doing that's breaking that thing down. So they're necessary to the creation, as annoying as they are. And sometimes in our haste, right? So sometimes I gotta remind myself, like when I see little spiders, like where I live, I don't kill them. When you're younger, you kill them. Oh, fucking spider, I'm gonna kill it, right? But if it's outside the house and it's not bothering me, I'll walk right past it because that spider is laying its web and everything to catch some of the other insects that bug me, right? So I have to understand these things. So everything in creation has a purpose. So again, back to what I was saying before we get back to the lesson, what we're going to find out on a deeper level, right, is that some of the things the Most High forbid us from dealing with is simply because the Most High has them here for a purpose. And if we remove them from the purpose, we throw the whole ecosystem out of whack. And then some things are just simply not healthy to eat, right? All of that is not written in Leviticus 11. He just tells us, don't eat this and don't eat this, eat that. That's what we know. But when you really begin to understand and get into the knowledge that, deeper knowledge like what Solomon had, when you start really studying the nature of animals and what they do, then you begin to understand why the Most High has them there and why you removing those animals will throw things off. Who likes bats? I don't like bats. Right? I don't like bats.
Con.
But
who like rats? Shit. Who like rats, brother?
No, nobody likes rats. They serve a purpose. They serve a purpose, right? When you look at them damn vultures and those birds of prey, especially in Africa, right? Those birds of prey, they serve a purpose, and that is that they sit there and they eat those decomposing animals. Somebody has to get rid of it. And we also see, what is it, Ezekiel? I'm winging it. I'm not going to go look. What is it, Ezekiel 39? Right? After the Most High destroys Babylon, right? The Most High tells us that the birds are going to help us get rid of a lot of the birds of prey are the ones that are going to help us get rid of a lot of these damn bodies and everything, because there's going to be plenty of food, man. That's in Revelations also. And also in Isaiah chapter 13. The Most High said it's going to be a den of every hateful bird, man. All these damn apex freaking not apex predators, but these daggone what's the word I'm looking for? What would like a vulture in them be? What is that? It's a that preys on dead bodies. What do they call that? It's not a predator. But you guys know what I'm talking about.
Carnivore, right?
Yeah, not even a carnivore, but these animals that are specifically here like to
carrion.
Yeah.
I believe it's carrion. They eat carcasses specifically.
Yeah, right. They're here for a reason. And those birds are annoying as hell. Right? They're annoying as hell. Owls. You don't like rats? You don't like mice? That's what owls are here for. Right? So everything serves a purpose. Right? So when the Most High told us not to eat that stuff, sometimes you might be like, well, why? There's a reason. Okay. Where we left off at we read verse 23. Let's move on to the next thing. Verse 24. And God said, let the earth bring forth the living creature after his kind, and creeping things, and beasts of the earth after his kind. And it was so. And God made the beast of the earth after his kind, and cattle after his kind, and everything that creepeth upon the earth after his kind. And God saw that it was good. So the seed is what determines what these things are. This is where we get the whole thing from. The seed is with the being with the man. There's a reason why that follows later, that genealogies are traced through men, because man carries the seed. Right? Let's move on. Whatever the seed is, that's what the creation is. Now, Genesis chapter 1, verse 26. And God said, let us make man in our image and after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him, male and female. Now, there is a literal connotation to that, right? Most High created us in his image, but there's also a more figurative connotation to that. How can man have dominion over everything if the Most High doesn't teach man to have dominion? How do you have dominion over the animals if the Most High doesn't teach you? So it goes further than just the literal thinking of the Most High just making man in his image. The Most High was teaching man how to have dominion. That's implied, right? This is the book of Colossians chapter 3, verse 10. And have put on the new man, which is renewed in knowledge after the image of him that created him. So the image of God is knowledge. Goes back to that word science that we were reading about earlier. The image of God is knowledge. In order for man to have dominion over the fish, the cattle, the air, and everything, the Most High had to give man knowledge of how to do so. Hopefully everybody understands. So there's a literal interpretation, but there's a more figurative interpretation that we have to apply as well, because Adam had to be taught these things. Okay, let's move on. Verse 28. And God blessed them and God said unto them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it. How are you going to subdue the earth if you're not taught? And have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. Verse 29. And God said, behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree, in which is the fruit of tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat. So, verse 30. And to every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the air, and to everything that creepeth upon the earth, wherein there is life, I have given every green herb for meat. And it was so. So in the beginning, brothers and sisters, both the animals in the very beginning and man were vegetarians or vegan, whatever word you want to use. That's why the animals, even on the ark, weren't necessarily eating each other, because they were eating green herbs as well. That was meat for them too. That changed after Noah and them got off the ark. That changed. That's where the Most High changed the law, where man started eating meat, and these apex animals and stuff like that, that's just coming off the ark. Once they started reproducing, that's where the food chain and everything came back in again. All right. Now, how would Adam know about these green herbs? How would he know if the Most High didn't teach him? That's what I was saying to you guys in the slide before. That's part of the Most High creating Adam in his image. And the image represents knowledge. The Most High had to teach Adam about the herbs and stuff like that. It's the book of Psalms, chapter 104, verse 14. He causeth the grass to grow for the cattle and herbs for the service of man. What is the service of herbs for the service of man? When you take herbs, that's what heals you. So how did Adam know how to do that? The Most High had to show him. That's part of him having dominion over the earth. It's part of it. So when it says he was created in God's image, that's the figurative connotation behind all of that. They were taught what herbs are for what. That's how the knowledge started, right? Let's look at the book of Isaiah, chapter 38, verse 21. For Isaiah had said, let them take a lump of figs and lay it for plaster upon a boil, and he shall recover. So what happens is this plaster right here was made of figs. This is something that they would put in ancient times on a boil, and that's how the boil would heal. Where did Isaiah learn how to do that from? That comes down from Adam. The Most High gave Adam knowledge of what trees and what their medicinal properties are, and what herbs are to be used for what to heal what. All that is implied. The Most High setting the creation in order and setting the rules in order. All right. Okay, brothers and sisters. So that's the end of the lesson. Like I said, I kind of just breezed through it for the most part. But right now, what I want to do, as usual, is I'm going to look in the chat. I want you brothers and sisters to tell me if the lesson made sense to you guys. Was everybody able to follow along? If you were able to follow along, put 1 in the chat. Let me know that you were able to follow along, that everything made sense. Brother Alma 1 said he hates snakes. Me too. Rats. Yeah. He said bed bugs. Yeah. The Most High got some things in creation. Like if you ever watch the Nature Channel and you look at some of the animals the Most High has in creation, I ask myself, like, what for? But the Most High knows, man. He knows. But some of the creation is like crazy, man. It's crazy.
Hey, priest, while brothers and sisters putting in the chat, I just wanted to reiterate one thing you went over. Genesis chapter 1, verse 10. The images you posted in the PowerPoint were very powerful, right? We're not going to get into any other doctrines or whatnot, but I just want to bring forth something. Genesis chapter 1, verse 10 says, and the Most High, or God Elohim, which we know as the angels, as you was bringing out, called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called the seas. And God saw that it was good. This was the third day, right? So the earth was created on the third day. Why am I bringing this forth? Because when you go down, right, and you read verse 14, and it talks about the heavens and the greater light, the two lights, right? Jump down to verse 16. That's showing you that the sun and the moon were created on the fourth day, right? So if the sun was created on the fourth day, how does the earth rotate around the sun? I just wanted to bring that out, right? The reason why I brought that out is because when you were reading the book of Wisdom of Solomon and you brought out chapter 7, verse 19, it says the beginning, the end, in the midst of times, the alterations of the turning of the sun and the changing of the seasons. So when the Most High created the earth, right, the earth was created first. All the elements was brought together, like how the priest was bringing out, like how the scriptures say, right? And the dry land was created first, and the division of the waters, right? And then on the fourth day was created the sun. So how is it the earth going around the sun? No, The earth is fixed. The earth is center. It's the sun that moves. And how do you prove that? We just read that in the Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 7. And when you read, right, verse 17 through 18, 17 through 19, but what I want is in verse 18. It says the beginning, the ending, and the midst of the times, the alterations of the turning of the sun. So the sun is what turns and moves in a circuit, right? Verse 19 tells you that the circuits of the years, the positions of the stars, the sun, moon, and stars is what rotates and moves, and the earth stays still. I just want us to get an understanding of that, because that's called geocentricity, when the earth is in the center of everything. The Most High created the earth first. Everything else was created in service of, right? The sun, moon, stars was given to us for seasons and months and years and so on and so forth. So it's very important for us to come out of the indoctrination that Esau has given us from when we were children in school. We was taught that the earth go around the sun and the sun is the center of the universe. Nah, that's sun worship. So I just wanted to bring that out, because some of the slides that the priest brought out showed the earth being fixed and flat. I mean, Salakia, fixed, and the sun going around it, right? So I just wanted to bring that out, and the scriptures bear witness to that.
And don't worry, brothers and sisters, we'll definitely revisit this, because there's more I could have went into. Like, for instance, I'll give y'all a perfect example, and then I'll answer that question I see in the chat. If you notice, the same day that the Most High creates the sun is the same day the Most High causes the grass and everything to grow. So the Bible is accurate. It's not like the Most High has grass growing on the first day and the sun is created the fourth day, because that would be a problem. But it's the same day, because grass and everything doesn't grow without the sun. We notice plants don't grow without the sun. They need the sun in order to grow. So notice on that very same day that the grass is coming forth is the very same day the sun and the moon were created as well. So the Bible is lining up perfectly. Now, somebody asked, share that thought. I don't know your YouTube name, so I don't know who that is, but that's all good. Nakumia is taking attendance. He asked the question. He said, is it okay? I have a question. Is it okay to believe in Israelite teaching that the first light in Genesis is Yahweh Shai? I have heard that, and here's my. I'm not going to say that it's wrong. What I'm going to tell you, honestly, brothers, is that comes from Christian commentaries. That comes from Christian commentaries. I know, because I checked. I was reading some of the commentaries on Genesis chapter 1, right, to see what they were saying, to see how close my breakdown is to what the commentaries are saying, and that's what they're saying. And the commentaries don't even agree. Some commentaries are saying that was the Most High God shining his light in Genesis chapter 1, verse 3. Some commentaries say Christ was there in the beginning and Christ was shining his light, because Christ is called the light as well, right? So that a lot of stuff comes from commentaries with a little bit of an Israelite remix. I don't necessarily have a problem with that, because, you know what I'm saying, Christ being an angelic force with power and angels being angelic forces with power, of course they would emit light. If man emits light, they emit light. So why not? Why not? We could throw all that in there. We could throw all of that in there. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I have no issue. I have no issue with that. You throw that in there along with the elements being activated, so forth and so on, and now you have plenty of light. All praises.
Brother Mike Hunt had a good question. He said, and I have another. If we were vegan, how was there clean and unclean animals for Noah to take? I know you want to get into the Noahide laws, priest, if you want to break that down.
Well, to answer your question, because we're going to get there, but to answer your question, because not every animal could be sacrificed. Remember, we still were doing sacrifices. Don't forget, Mike, right?
That's right.
You read about Cain and Abel. They were supposed to bring a sacrifice to the Most High. Most High doesn't accept every sacrifice. Only certain animals could be sacrificed to the Most High. So Adam taught his sons that. So yes, there would still need to be clean and unclean, not just for consumption, but for sacrifice as well. Like you couldn't sacrifice a pig to the Most High, but you could sacrifice a ram or a lamb to the Most High. So you still would need clean and unclean, whether you're eating meat or not.
Also, if I could land back behind that, also, there are some Israelites who they're going to the extreme. They're vegans. I respect it. And they're going to the extreme saying that no meat, we shouldn't eat any meat whatsoever. I understand their thought pattern based on the scriptures, because in the beginning, you know, the herbs was our meat, right? We just read that in the book of Genesis. But you can't supersede Yahushua, right? If Yahushua kept the Passover service, right? Who are we? We are subservient to Yahushua. The servant is not greater than the master. The Lord told us that we have to keep the feast of Passover, which entails the killing of the lamb, right? Drinking of the wine, so on and so forth. Certain things you're just gonna have to do. You could be a vegan, what, all 11 months out the year, priest, but you gotta partake in the Passover, because that's something that's what is called perpetual. We have to keep these feasts forever. So I don't want brothers and sisters to get on a kick like, well, I'm vegan, I'm not going to eat meat, because we understand that the animals nowadays are, for the most part, hybrid. They're not like in our forefathers' times. They're not as clean. We understand that. We're not saying you got to eat meat 24/7, but for the Passover time, you do have to partake in the feast. You do have to eat the lamb. That's representative of the body of Christ. We have to do that. So let's not get overly righteous with it. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Now, real quick, to your point, Akam 1, you said John 8:12, it says, Christ is the light of the world. That's true. But remember that God there, that God is Christ and the angels. So when they're saying, let there be light, Christ is not talking about himself, right? Because he's actually the one that's initiating. Don't forget that word there for God is Elohim, which is the angels, which Christ is amongst those angels that are actually doing the creating. So there is something outside of them that they're initiating. That's what I'm saying. But I don't mind if you say that Christ has light and he was part of that light in the beginning. That's not a big deal. Like, that's not nothing to trip over. If I hear a brother breaking it down that way, I got no problem with that whatsoever. But there was something that was going on that the angels and Christ were initiating outside of themselves. They were activating outside of themselves. That's what I'm saying. Question. Is there a scripture that gives some details about how sunsets and sunrises get so colorful? Not to my knowledge. I don't think so. I'll look for it, but I don't think so. Just to be clear, was man created on the 5th day or the 6th day? I know you said we all come from the waters, right? Well, that's the thing, right? Man was created. Well, let's do it this way. Watch this.
God, I'm looking at it right now. 126.
No, well, we're gonna allow Esdras to help us. Second Esdras chapter 6. Right. Mm-hmm. And we'll definitely get there. Oh yeah, this does give me the right thing. Second Esdras chapter 56. And give me a second. So as you guys can see, we're in Second Esdras chapter 6, right? Oh, I'm not even sharing my screen. Duh. Right. Okay. That would help. Right. Okay. So you guys can see where we are. We're in Second Esdras chapter 6, right? So let's scroll down, because the Most High is revealing some mysteries to Esdras, right? So 1 second. So as you guys could see, right, the Most High speaks to Esdras about, in verse 41, the second day of creation. 42, the third day of creation. 45, the fourth day of creation. And 47, day number 5. So let's read this. Second Esdras chapter 6, verse 47. And upon the 5th day, thou settest unto the 7th part, where the waters were gathered, that it should bring forth living creatures, fowls and fish, and so it came to pass. Right? Verse 48. For the dumb water and without life brought forth living things at the commandment of God, that all people might praise thy wondrous works. This is all still going on the 5th day. Right? Verse 49. Then didst thou ordain 2 living creatures, the one thou called Enoch, and the other Leviathan. This word Enoch in the Hebrew is from the word kanawak, right? Which I believe is upright, right? No, educated, sorry. Let's look up the word Enoch real quick. I don't want to give you wrong information. This has been a while. And I'm kind of winging it on this part. Dedicated, trained, disciplined. That's what it means, right? Dedicated, trained, or disciplined. That's man. So the Most High called one Enoch, or the dedicated, disciplined one, and the Most High gave him one part of the earth. And Leviathan represents those things that live in the water, right? Verse 50. And did it separate the one from another? For the seventh part, namely where the water was gathered, might not hold them both. Unto Enoch thou gavest one part, which was dried up the third day, that he should dwell in the same part wherein are 1,000 hills. So this Enoch, or this upright one, or this dedicated one, the Most High created him on the fifth day. So when you go to Genesis chapter 1, where the Most High said the waters brought forth all the living creatures, right? That includes man. On the sixth day, the Most High chose out Adam out of man, and the Most High started dealing with Adam exclusively and gave him Eve. And that's when the whole story starts picking up, where they get into Cain and Abel, et cetera, et cetera. So Adam was chosen from amongst the Adamites, the male and females that the Most High created. But that was done on the sixth day. But on the fifth day, the Most High brought forth man, along with all the rest of the creation. And the Apocrypha gives us that mystery right here in 2nd Esdras chapter 6, verses 47 through 52. Okay. Did that answer your question? Let me know. Let me see in the chat if that answered your question. You see who actually asked it. I gotta go back and see who actually. That was
Yakar Ruach.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's a class within itself when you're going into Adamite.
I know. I could have. That's what I was saying earlier. I was like, yo, if I really went into this the way I wanted to go into it, we would be here all night.
For now, it's the 6th day. Yeah, it's the 6th day. Adam in terms of man as we know it, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But mankind in general, the Most High brought them out the waters with all the rest of the creation. So, Akif, did that make sense to you? Leviathan just represents sea creatures, man. Large creatures. It's not the same Leviathan as in the book of Job. It's not really the same thing. It's just talking about sea creatures in general. That's it. Large creatures in general. That's all that dwell in the waters, right? And just, I'll be careful not to overflow brothers and sisters with information. But the Apocrypha, unlike the rest of the Bible, you have your Old Testament that comes from the Masoretic text, right, which is Hebrew. You have your New Testament that comes from the Textus Receptus. But the Apocrypha doesn't come from either. The Apocryphas that we have today come from other texts, like they were in the Latin Vulgate and other texts that we have. That kind of comes down from Latin. So again, sometimes you lose things in translation. So you'll read that word Leviathan there in 2nd Ezra chapter 6 and think it's the same Leviathan being mentioned in Job, and it's really not, right? We'll get to all of that when we do textual criticism, but that's kind of a complicated answer. I hope it made sense. It's not really talking about Leviathan the same way that Job is. Okay. Well, you guys can continue to. We have some time. I was going to let you guys go early. If you guys have any other questions that you guys want to ask, you guys can ask it, right? Like I said, I want to do a review next week because I know even in 4 weeks, we've gone through a lot, I know. So I kind of want to circle back and kind of go over some things that we went over already. I kind of want to give you guys a little bit of a quiz just to make sure that you guys are staying with me and you know what's going on. And then we could proceed on to, more information, right? Now we're going to get into it because I know I've got brothers and sisters that ask me about a whole bunch of other topics that you guys want to touch on, and we're going to get into all those topics. But I wanted to start from the very beginning. So we start from the very beginning and work our way up. Okay. Any other questions or concerns? You guys are doing a great job, by the way. I like the fact that you guys are here, and for the most part, you brothers and sisters are coming in on time. I'm able to get my lessons going, and you guys seem to comprehend, have a good comprehension of the information, which is good. So I'm always concerned that I might be overdoing it in my lessons. So I'm glad that you brothers and sisters are able to comprehend. Anybody else got anything that they want to ask, especially relating to today's lesson? Zahab, you have anything that you want to say before we get out of here if nobody has any questions?
Nah, just all things will be revealed, through discipline and studying, and the Most High will, he's the one that's going to give the revelation. So if some things might not click right away, right now, just, ask questions and continually search the scriptures, and the things will be revealed. The thing which I and the priest will agree, which we don't want y'all brothers to do, is just while you're in a student mode, not everybody, because we understand that some brothers are on a higher level than others, but once you're learning this thing, repetition is good. Don't try to overstep the milk to try to get to the meat, because some topics are more sexier than others. Like, you want to, oh man, this is powerful, I want to get into that. You could get tripped up. Just, go at the pace that's good and conducive for you. And the scriptures talk about them being weaned from the breast through milk, meaning you got to understand the basics first before you get to certain levels, because when you're learning, it's just some people's capacity for learning is different than others. Stay humble, stay in the scriptures. That's all I can say. Hold fast to that which is true.
I'm gonna share my screen real quick, and I'm gonna show you guys some things real quick that might help you brothers and sisters out. Okay. Oops, nope. What do I want to do? Entire screen. Okay. So stop sharing because I don't know what the French toast that was. Okay. Okay, cool. So this is a look at the price, y'all. $6. I'm gonna tell you something. That book right there is dynamite. Right? It's dynamite. It's a little old. When I say it's a little old, meaning that the book came out many years ago. Right? But it's dynamite. And because it has such a low price, and I'm only showing this to y'all in the academy, right? You can actually come to this website, chick.com, and you guys can order this book. Don't get it off of Amazon because you guys might wind up paying more money for it. Anybody that wants this book, just come to chick.com and you get this book for $6. It's called the Evolution Handbook, right? This book right here is going to set you brothers and sisters on pace to understanding a lot of stuff. This book helped me a lot. Okay. There's a lot of subjects, like science wasn't one of my best subjects in school at all. So simply by reading this book, right, what it helped me do now is now I'm able to go and I'm able to, of course, I go and I fact check what it is they're saying, but they point me in the right direction, right? Like I can have a conversation about all the different types of dating methods that they use for fossils and strata and, like I said, mutations and all these different subjects that for the most part, many of us weren't interested in school in, and you weren't maybe proficient at. Some people on the phone may have been, but many of us weren't interested in this stuff, right? This book answers a lot of questions and will point you in the right direction. The only problem is that it's old. So you got to, if you use it, right, you have to go in and fact check and see what the latest information on said subject is. But I'm telling you, brothers and sisters, this book will help you out a lot. For instance, and I'm going to let you brothers and sisters go after that. It was this book, right, that introduced me to okay, so a few years ago, right, there was let me just open up another screen real quick and I'm going to show you guys something. So you guys may or may not be aware of something called Darwin's finches, right? This is like a drawing that Charles Darwin did. It's Darwin's finches, right? And one of the proofs of evolution that Darwin tried to use is this whole thing about adaptation, right? So through a process of evolution and survival of the fittest, right? A particular finch or bird, its anatomy will evolve based on its location. Its anatomy will evolve to make it more adaptable to whatever location that it's in, right? So that's why you might have finches, and the finches all have different beaks, so forth and so on, right? I didn't know much about that, and I wasn't trying to read a whole bunch of books to learn about that, right? So what happened was I read this book, and it kind of gave me this. You know what's a good word for this book? Cliff notes. So you ain't got to sit down and read no long-winded scientific journal or nothing. You know what I'm saying? It gives you the cliff notes, and now you know what to go look for, and you got to read a whole bunch of books, a whole bunch of papers and white papers and scientific articles. Nope. Now I know how to deal with it. Okay, what is Darwin's finches? This is what he says it is, and this is why it's wrong. Now I'm gonna go look into it. Right? There was another one in his book about the pepper moths, right? There's something called the pepper moths. I'm gonna tell you, try to stay with me now because I'm not showing it to you guys, but I used this years ago to cut Ankh from the Amun-Ra squad. You had this guy named Ankh. He's from the Amun-Ra squad in the conscious community, whatever. And I used this book. This book taught me about, I didn't know how to answer that question when he was talking about it. This book taught me what to say. And then I went and looked into it, was like, damn, this book is right. So you have something called spotted moths, right? Let me see, spotted moths. See what it gives me. Right, so there was a particular, you guys can see the pepper moth evolution, right? So here it is, right? There's a whole article about this on Wikipedia, right? This whole thing about evolution of peppered moths, right? So what they're saying, what they were basically saying is that you had originally you had what was known like as a peppered moth or like a white moth. And this moth eventually evolved into this moth right here because this color right here, this moth right here, this color right here makes it more camouflage in the tree so the predators can't see it. So they said the reason why you have more of these moths, because you have more of these moths than these, is because of evolution. That's what they said. I'm going to keep it a buck with you, brothers and sisters, right? I knew that was BS, but I did not know how to argue it. This book taught me how to argue it. Because here's what happened. And when you read the book, it's so common sense. I'm like, why not think about that? The story of the peppered moth and evolution comes in during the time of what's known as the Industrial Revolution. You guys see it right there, the Industrial Revolution, right? So the Industrial Revolution in England, you had a lot of factories. You guys are from London. Some of y'all from London, so y'all, whatever. During the Industrial Revolution, you had a lot of factories and stuff like that, right? And there was a large population of moths in this particular area of London, and a lot of trees, so forth and so on. What was happening was because of all the emissions from the plants and stuff like that, a lot of the trees in that area became coated with like the residue from the the chimneys and the factories of pushing out whatever. A lot of the trees became covered with the residue, right? What would happen is when these trees were covered with the residue, which would be dark, right? If this moth lands on the tree that's dark, the predators can see it, right? They can see it. If this moth lands on that same tree, because it's dark, the predators can't see it. So what happened was, because the predators could see this moth and not this moth as much, the predators wound up eating a lot of these moths more. So what happened? You had an overpopulation of these moths and an underpopulation of these moths. And they said that was due to evolution. That's what they said. But this book taught me, no, that's not what happened. What happened was the emissions from these factories that were covering the trees was making it so the predators couldn't see these moths, so they were surviving and reproducing. Whereas these moths were not surviving and not able to reproduce because they were being eaten. It's as simple as that. There was no evolution, but this is actually taught as evolution. And if you don't know how to argue that, right, you stuck. And the conscious community tried to use this against me and Hashar, right? Luckily for me, I had this book. So I was reading this. You see the book is 922 pages, but it's a little small book, so that 922 pages is not, cut that in half. This book would be like, if it was a regular size book, it'd be about 300 pages. But because it's so compact, that's why it's so many pages. But I just happened to be turning through this book, and I came to the chapter where they actually broke that whole thing down, and it made perfect sense. And it was no evolution involved whatsoever. That theory was debunked a long time ago, and you know, black people are still teaching that stuff today. We know what a white man is, but black people in the conscious community will still teach that because you have more of these moths than these, that's evolution. The moth adapted to its environment. No, dummy. The predators were able to see this moth because the trees were covered in all that residue. So they were eating these and not eating these. So that's why there's more of these. It's not that hard. So again, this book is not bad. So this is a very good place. Like if you're not good with science and you want to find out how to answer arguments, especially anti-Bible arguments, that's what this book is about. This book is about answering questions that people will bring to you about the Bible that are rooted in so-called science and how you can answer them in a scientific manner. So I used this book very early on a lot, as well as the book I showed you guys before. Let's bring it up one more time before we out of here. There's another book I use. Right. Darwin's Doubt. I showed you guys this book before. This is also a very good book. You guys see right now, it's $21. I think, you got to get that one off Amazon, but it's $21, right? It's another good book that goes into a lot of that stuff. It'll help you. And lastly, this book. This book right here. The Science of God by Gerald Schroeder. Very good book, right? Now, here's the thing with books, right? Let's be clear. I recommend these books to brothers and sisters with the understanding that we all understand that the Bible is the anchor and the foundation. The Bible is the strainer. All doctrines must be strained through the Bible. If you read something in a book and it doesn't line up with the Bible, you toss it. You eat the meat and spit out the bones. Right? So as we move further on into the academy and into lessons even past the academy, when I go into certain subjects about science, so forth and so on, I refer to books like these because there's a lot of good stuff in some of these books that line up with the Bible that make the Bible make sense. Right? Because again, we learned earlier that proper science lines up with the Bible, we have no issue with that. So if anybody does get a hold of these books and you want to know what's good in these books so you don't have to read all the stuff, just let me know. But definitely there's a ton of stuff in this book. I don't even think I've had this book for, I kid you guys, now about maybe 20 years. My copy's falling apart. It's about time for me to get a new one. But every time that I have arguments with the damn Amon-Ra squad, the rest of these guys about science and stuff, I go to this book a lot of times and then work my way up because it's so compact and so to the point. And it deals with straight up science, like not this straight up science, debunking half the shit that they say. All right, so that's enough of that.
Hey, there was a sister who asked a question. This could be a last question. It's real simple. Could be a sister. Gels MSK could be a brother. I'm not sure. Was the creation actually 7 days or 7,000 years?
Man, well, it definitely wasn't 7 days because there's a lot of things going on. Not 7 literal days, according to how we know days today. I was raised to believe that the 7 days was 7,000 years. So I stick with that till Yahweh Shah comes back and says different. Mike Hunt, you can say that. Yes. Right. Because everything being without form and void is in what you would call a chaotic state. So you could say that, right? And the Most High began to bring order into the universe by causing the elements to be activated. So that goes into the whole thing of the Most High forming the light and separating the light from the darkness, the chaos from the order. So yeah, I have no issue with that. No issue with that whatsoever. I'm the one who wants to go over the 7 churches in Revelation. Well, yeah, bro. So you see, let me show y'all something real quick before we go. Let me show you guys something real quick before we go. So you guys can see. I need you guys to see something. I've showed you guys this before. No, not you guys, but I've showed this on YouTube before. Because people be thinking I'm capping. So, as the young people say, you capping. No, I'm not capping. Let me do full screen. I want you guys to look at this folder, right? This is my folder right here. When you come to the, if this stuff will stop doing that crap, so annoying. Guys, when you come to the bottom left-hand corner right here, right? You see right there where it says, I keep hovering over it and it's opened up a window. You guys see in the bottom left-hand corner, right under where it says network, it says 278 items. You know what that 278, that's 278 PowerPoints. That's what you guys are seeing right here. And this is only one flash drive. I have another flash drive with more PowerPoints. So this is, I'm not going to get through all this in the academy, you know. So, but hey, what's the saying say? When you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. So I try to be ready to have any conversation that somebody will bring up about the Bible. I try. I'm sure that there's some stuff I'm not prepared for still, even me, right? But I try to be as prepared as I can. And this was the most efficient way. Like I could just, let me show you. I don't want to tell you, let me show you. So it's 278 PowerPoints in here. You asked specifically about Revelation. Well, your 7 churches, this is Revelation chapter 2. This is the PowerPoint for that. And this is Revelation chapter 3. Those are your 7 churches. So yes, these are definitely here. And yes, we will certainly, Most High allow, of course, be going over that. Most High allow. No, Sagun, I've never heard about that. And that's a hell of a title, Tornado in the Junkyard. You might make me look into that. I already got too many books, man, but you know, I ain't got no more room. But you know what? Yeah, I gotta check into that. And by the way, so brothers and sisters know, once the new website is activated, that's why I tell you, y'all, don't make sure if y'all gonna get books, before you buy the book, holler at me before you buy it, because a lot of books I'm gonna go into, I have the PDFs for them, and you can just get them for free. Why would you buy it, right? In the case of these science books I was showing y'all, these are not. I don't have these in PDFs. So you're gonna have to buy those. But a lot of books I'm gonna show y'all, I have the PDF, so you don't necessarily have to go out and buy it. Save your money. Save your money. You know what I'm saying? All right. Put that money aside so you can come to Passover. You know what I mean? Have a good time. That's what I say. All right. So I think that we're done. I don't see anybody else asking anything. Appreciate you, brothers and sisters. If you have not put your name for attendance inside the chat, make sure that you guys do that. When I say the chat, I'm talking about right here on YouTube. And if you want to follow it up with the Telegram as well, you can do that. All right. I appreciate you, brothers and sisters. And I will see you, brothers and sisters, next Sunday. We're going to get it in again. I'll make sure that I have something really good for you, brothers and sisters. Maybe I'll switch it up just a little bit. Maybe because a brother made a request, Maybe I might just switch it up. I start at the beginning of the Bible. Maybe I'll go to the end of the Bible and do Revelations 2 and 3 next week. Let's take a vote. Let's take a vote before we go. If you guys want me to go over Revelation chapter 2 and chapter 3 next week, put 1 in the chat. If you guys want me to keep going in order and just keep going through Genesis, put 2. So if you want me to do Revelations 2 and 3 next, it's going to be done regardless. But if you want me to do Revelations 2 and 3 next week, put 1 in the chat. If you want me to just keep going through Genesis right now, put 2 in the chat. Just the Academy, not the rest of the camp. Just the Academy. I want to see what y'all think. All righty. So consensus is let's just keep going in order for now. Sounds good to me. That's what we're going to do. All right. Peace and blessings to everybody. Much love to y'all. I appreciate y'all. And I will see you guys again next week. Shalom.
Shalom. All praises to Yahweh and his son Yahweh Shai. My name is Karab.
My name is Shamuel Al-Qassad.
My name is Officer Zachariah von Yahweh of the Lions of Israel camp.
I have been in this knowledge for 31 years, since 1988.
I've been in the truth for 9 years.
I've been in the truth for 3 years. Before I came into this truth, I was in a gang and I did a lot of wickedness towards my own people.
Before I became an Israelite, I was in the church, eating pork and doing abominable things.
I was a Rastafarian before I came into this knowledge. The Lord is looking for a few good men, because our Lord Christ says that the harvest is plentiful and the laborers are few. Donate to the Lions of Israel Building Fund so that we can teach our people their true language.
So the Spirit moves you. Donate to the Lions of Israel Building Fund to wake our people up.
Brothers and sisters, Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai Barakathon.
Shalom. Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shabbat Barakathon.